we are at a single family home, detached property in Toronto that both of our clients bought and converted into 5 legal units. They purchased it for under $800,000 and they're going to spend around $600,000 to do the entire conversion. And then after all of it, they should be generating around $11,000 of rent per month and be able to refinance commercially with the MLI Select refinancing. I do have Victoria from BuildX Design, the architect for this project, that's going to be giving us a tour and also give us some cost saving strategies on what should be done for fourplex conversions and give us some tips and lessons learned as well. All right, let's start the tour.
We're standing here on the second floor. This is a 1-bedroom unit. It's an open concept living and kitchen area, gas appliances, so that way that we can keep our electrical load down. Here we have a HRV ERV system. This helps with natural ventilation because the heating system for this unit is a ductless heat pump. This is great because we have separate heating for this individual unit, and paired with the HRV ERV, then that will provide natural ventilation to the space. We have a private bathroom here, nice finishes, stand-up shower as well. One of the reasons why we chose heat pumps as the mechanical system for this retrofit is that we don't need to deal with ducts. It's a lot easier to renovate and retrofit an older home using heat pumps because you don't need to think about tying into existing systems, and it just keeps things a lot cleaner. It's also good for individual units, right? So each unit has individual control for heating and cooling, and these are electric systems. So if you pair that with separate electrical meters, then each tenant can have their own electricity bill as well. One of the opportunities with financing is with the CMHC MLI Select program. So if you have 5 units or greater, this is a commercial financing program that's with the government, CMHC, that you can qualify for additional points if you go with energy efficiency. One of the biggest things is the walls, right? A lot of older homes in Toronto are not insulated, right? Typical homes are double brick assembly, no insulation, so you just have plaster walls on top of that. So typically what we're finding is you're stripping down the entire house, you're gutting it, re-insulating, reframing, and then refinishing. So that can be a lot of work, but again, on the back end, you get a better financing program, lower rates and whatnot. Second would be the window systems. Typically, you're going to upgrade to at least double pane windows, potentially triple, and then lastly, the mechanical systems. Heat pumps are one of the greatest areas to improve upon, so you'll be upgrading that to be energy efficient as well. Looking at your electrical systems, that's a huge piece that sometimes is overlooked. When you're upgrading from a 200 amp system to a 400 amp system, it's quite the leap in cost and in terms of timeline. 400 amp systems must go underground, right? It's a lot higher amperage, so it can't be an overhead line. That can be too much power, it's dangerous. So the city forces you to trench, dig, and then put that power line underground. So you can imagine the additional cost for trenching, digging, not only on your side, but also on the city side, the coordination for that, and then the power line itself. So all of that can be incredibly expensive. To give you some numbers, an example of a 200 amp upgrade could be, say, $2,000. And then for 400 amp upgrades, I've seen $50,000 up to $90,000, depending on how much work is involved, where's the electrical pole coming from, how much digging on the city side needs to be done. So again, incredibly expensive and something that you might want to consider avoiding.
This is an interesting house. You can split into 4 units. I mean, typically, a lot of times, the max that we can split a house into is 3 units. What makes a house be able to split into 4 units as opposed to 3 units?
Generally, looking at the square footage, right? The more square footage you have, the better opportunity you have to fit the units. Not only that, just because you can split the units into 4 doesn't mean that's maybe optimal for you. Talk to the Elevate team so that they'll be able to tell you what kind of rents you can get, what kind of tenants you can get. But basically, the larger the area, larger the footprint, then the different ways we can think about, slicing it up into different units. But this house in particular was very interesting because it's incredibly long. It might not look like it from the street, But there was the original house and then an addition and then an addition beyond that. Looking at the house, is actually a weird single family home. It had multiple levels, multiple floors. And in my opinion, it's not even ideal as a single family home. So because it was a bit of a Frankenstein house already, let's call it, it was pretty ideal to turn into 4 units. Front half is 1 unit, back half is 1 unit, second floor is 1 unit, and then the basement lower level is 1 unit. So 4 units total in the main house.
The basement is a little bit different, so why don't we go there and take a look at that?
We're actually going with shared laundry, and for those of you who don't know, there are gas dryers out there, so that's how we reduced the electrical load on it, so switched it to gas. This is almost like a convenience store to the lower level unit, but this actually connects up to a stair and can be publicly accessed. The washer dryer looks exactly like an electrical one. It's just powered by gas. Because of that, we can reduce the electrical load. There's the sump pump, there's a clean out, there's the water tank, there's separate water lines. So if they want to separately submeter that at a later point, that could be a possibility. There are companies that have Wi-Fi technology, so then you can bill separately as well.
So we just toured the Fourplex, and it's actually just the first part of a 2-part project to make it into 5 units. Can we talk about the second part and what the plans are for it?
So the second part of this project is the garden suite, which we are converting the existing garage into a 5th unit. So it's going to be a 1-bedroom apartment. And the nice thing about it is the garage was existing, it's in great shape, so a lot of the setbacks are not meeting the current zoning rules, but because it was a legally built garage, then we are able to maintain these setbacks. It's a little bit closer to the house than what's normally allowed, but they're essentially grandfathered in. One of the big things in Toronto is right now, as of right, the development charges are waived on up to 4 units. So the reason behind splitting this into 2 phases is so that we could avoid development charges. By doing the first phase as 4 units, no development charges, and then the 5th unit, which is the garage unit conversion, will be deferred development charge. So after 20 years, essentially the development charges are waived.
Okay, so let's talk timelines. How long does design take? How long does permit take? And construction for this project, the Fourplex, and then what's expected for the garden suite as well?
Depending on how much is being designed, this is more of a conversion, so it can be done pretty quickly. I usually say just give it 6 to 8 weeks. You know, that includes architectural design, floor plans, a bit of back and forth between you and the client looking for maybe some optimizations, changes in the plan, and then also including a coordination with engineering, structural, mechanical, for your HVAC, your plumbing, and all that. And then once you're kind of wrapped up that drawing package, you can submit for building permits. Something like this, these days, we're seeing anything around 6 to 12 weeks, depending on the examiner you get. So if you get lucky, it's a bit on the lower end. If you get somebody that goes on vacation, maybe it's on the higher end. Yeah. But yeah, so that's the overall timeline in terms of approvals. And then for construction, for something like this, I would say probably give yourself like 8 months.
And then for the garden suite, are we looking at the same timelines?
For design's already done. We kind of do it at the same time as the Fourplex, so you're kind of pre-planning that aspect. And then for the permit review process, it should go under fast track. So we're hoping for, 3 to 4 weeks, something like that.
Okay, so can you talk a little bit more about fast track? What does that mean?
Yeah, so fast track is essentially a different stream of the buildings department that they speed up your review process. So it's including interior renovations, alterations, it includes up to duplexes, and then it includes garden suites and laneway suites, or the accessory dwellings. If you fall under that category, we've gotten a permit as little as 2 days for the permits to be reviewed and then issued. So it can be incredibly fast, but it has to be a specific type of project.
I know that some projects require a zoning review or a zoning certificate. Is something like this required for a fourplex conversion like this?
Yeah, so there is a process to get a zoning review done. That is highly recommended by the city, just so that you make sure that everything that you're proposing is allowed. That being said, you don't have to do it. It's just highly recommended by the city. You can get it done essentially in tandem with when you submit for building permit. and there will always be a zoning review check. You can essentially just get it done at the same time as your building permit review.
Our leasing team has completed leasing on the property, and all 4 units combined will add up to total rents of around $8,500 a month. Subtract operating expenses, subtract mortgage payment based on an 80% loan on the purchase price, and you are looking at around $4,000 of positive cash flow each month. Now, the exit strategy here, once the garden suite is complete, is to refinance commercially with the CMHC MLI Select. And based on current calculations and assumptions, the owner can actually pull out all of their initial capital and continue to cash flow positive every single month on refinance. So this is a 4+1. It obviously takes longer, it costs more money, but then you can potentially refinance commercially with the CMHC. There are some risks there because we don't know for sure how the refinancing works. A lot of times these days we're looking at 3+1, so a triplex conversion plus an ADU, and those numbers look pretty good too. So from a design standpoint from you, what do you think are the pros and cons of a triplex versus a fourplex?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I think when we're looking at existing homes, especially, a lot of homes in Toronto, like they're not huge, right? So in a typical scenario, we have a 2-story plus a basement. In that case, very easy to convert every level into 1 unit. And then that could be a triplex, and then you fit the 4th unit as an ADU at the back. So that's like just the easiest scenario. You could probably find properties all day with that kind of footprint and that kind of style. So I think that's ideal because it's a no-brainer, right? Like as long as you kind of meet the areas and whatnot, then you can make it work. Fourplex, not all houses can fit 4 units, right? So it's a little bit more niche, a little bit more figuring out. That's where I think we're usually brought in to kind of help determine, can we actually fit 4 units? And I always say, just because you can't fit 4 units in the main building doesn't mean you necessarily want to. You might end up with smaller units, different kind of tenants, different kind of maybe turnover when you're looking at renting it out. So again, it depends on your strategy and your goals.
Yeah, different options. So 4+1 is one option, but it's really not the only investment option for you. So thanks so much, Victoria, for doing this tour and this video with us. Why don't you tell us a little bit more about your services?
My company is BuildX Design. I'm the principal architect. One of our specialties is multiplex conversions, new builds, and helping with ADUs such as laneway suites and garden suites. We're excited to work with teams like Elevate to help you plan, strategize, and work towards your goals to find the right plan for you, find the right properties that are great opportunities for some of these 4+1 conversions.
If you want to learn more about buying investment properties in Toronto, feel free to reach out to us, Elevate Realty. And if you want design help with multiplex conversions or multiplex builds, reach out to Victoria from BuildX Design. I have her handle here and website, so you can go over and check her out as well. Until next time.